17.
All right. So, good afternoon, Colonel Aiken.
Good afternoon.
I'm Dr. Candy Tate with the Atlanta branch of the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. We're here in your home in Atlanta on Wednesday, June 17, 2015, and I'm here with
Sean Jones.
State your affiliation.
Sean Jones, and I am also with the Atlanta chapter of the Association for African American Life, Study of African American Life and History, and the parliamentarian on the executive committee.
And together we're going to interview you and appreciate you taking time about your experiences as an African American veteran.
Thank you.
And Sean's going to get us started.
Good afternoon, Colonel. Good afternoon. Good to see you again. Good. First question, I'll get right to it. When and where were you born, sir?
I was born in Charleston, South Carolina on July 11, 1950, soon to be 65 years old.
Absolutely. Your parents, what were their names and their occupation?
My mother was Maud Lovey Aiken and Herman Harris Aiken. My mother was a domestic, and my father worked for the Charleston Naval Shipyard.
And do you have any siblings, and if so, what are their names and gender?
My older brother John died in 1977. At age 39. I had a sister, Marva. She passed 2 years ago at age 58. I now have a sister, Sherilyn, age 63, living in Charleston, South Carolina, and brother Jerome, just turned 60, living in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Did any of your siblings serve in the military?
No, I'm the only one.
What were you doing before you entered the service?
I was in college. I was a student at Tuskegee Institute, now Tuskegee University, and I can tell you that was an unbelievable experience. Unbelievable experience.
In which branch of the military did you serve?
U.S. Army, proudly for 26 years.
Did you enlist or were you drafted?
No, I was actually in the ROTC program at Tuskegee. I won an ROTC scholarship, graduated as a distinguished military graduate in 1972, and was commissioned in August of 1972 as a second lieutenant of the United States Army.
And you mentioned how exciting Tuskegee was. What drew you to go to Tuskegee?
The history behind it. I had some great friends to go there before me, and they just kept telling me the summer of my graduation, you need to come to Tuskegee. And you know, you've always heard about different schools, but actually my family bloodline was running through Morehouse. I had relatives to go to Morehouse, an uncle who really wanted me to go there, but something was drawing me to Tuskegee, and I ended up going there. I considered that probably the catalyst of my career, starting there, because Tuskegee at that time was such a small campus of about 3,500 students. We were like family. Everyone knew everyone. No one had cars, televisions, cell phones, all of that. So every day was you meet up with your friends and buddies. And here I am, soon to be 45 years out of college, and I'm still connected to friends as though it was yesterday. So that's what really drew me to Tuskegee.
What happened when you departed for training, and what was your first early days of training like?
Well, my first early days of training was in 1970 at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. That was the equivalent of what we call our ROTC officer enlisted type of training. What they were trying to do really was to gear us up to go to Vietnam. Training was tough. It was extremely tough. Condo training, hand-to-hand combat training, nighttime training, anything that would prepare us to go to Vietnam, even going through tunnels underground, river crossings. I mean, you name it, we did it. Finding wild food in the forest and killing it and preparing it in the environment, sleeping in a hammock, dead of night, hard rain between trees. Crazy. But It was survival training to prepare us to go to Vietnam. That's what it's about.
Do you recall any of your instructors, and if so, what were they like?
One in particular was a Captain Stewart, who was a Florida A&M graduate. He was a Sigma. I was an Omega. And I can recall I had this one white enlisted sergeant that detested me and several other black young students, ROTC students that were eventually going to become officers. And this gentleman was just difficult. And I recall one day in training, he called me in his office and he said, "Aiken, what is your problem?" I said, "Captain, I don't understand." He said, "Why in the world are you letting this man affect you the way he is, as smart as you are? You could do anything you want to do. Don't let this guy affect you." Light went on. I said, "You know what, he's right." I was 20 years old. I'm going to be an officer in a year and a half, 2 years. And I'm letting this old beat up guy from Auburn, Alabama. I can remember it like it was yesterday. And it changed. He was one of my best instructors, and I ended up being the top student graduating out of the class as a result of that. And became a platoon leader the day that we graduated from Fort Bragg. I had no idea that was going to happen. But I worked hard. I worked my butt off. I did. Because I wanted to prove to him that he was right about me. And that's what I did.
Did you receive any specialized training, and if so, what?
I did all kinds of training. I mean, expert field medical badge training, recondo training, whatever the Army had for us, man. At the time, we did it. That was what you're about. Most people don't realize that, yeah, we look pretty and nice in our uniform, but we're trained to fight. They tend to forget that. We're trained to fight. I have a young man that kind of called my son. He says, "Have you ever killed anybody?" And I said, "No, I never really killed anybody, but I didn't really want to. But if I had to, I would, because I was trained to protect myself, protect my soldiers, and to come home." That's what my always game plan was. Wherever I was, I want to come home. So whatever that took, I would do.
How did you adapt to military life, including the physical regimen and barracks and food and social life?
Well, adapting to military life wasn't that difficult for me because our ROTC training at Tuskegee prepared us for that. We had some exceptional ROTC instructors who were Vietnam hardened veterans. So they prepared us well. The key was preparing the mind. Once you prepare the mind, the body follows. Remember that? Free your mind and what follows? Well, they prepared our minds. So when we went to Tuskegee into the actual Army duty, we just had to adapt to that environment because we had the skill sets. Folks didn't know it, that we had the skill sets. We had to prove it to them. But I felt very prepared going where I went. Did not.
What was your major at Tuskegee?
Biology.
Biology.
And chemistry. Yeah.
And how did that help you in applying it to the military service? I hear you saying that Tuskegee prepared you a great deal.
Right.
Did your education fall in line with that preparation?
Absolutely. As well? Because our instructors, I don't know how they are with the students today, but our instructors at Tuskegee and the ROTC department and all the others, they put a lot on your shoulders to perform because they would say to you, "Young man," they always called you by your name, Mr. Aiken, "it is up to you to do this. I'm giving you the tools, you do it. I'm not going to lead you down that road. I'm going to give you the tools to do it." So it was incumbent upon us to grow up real quick. And if you didn't, they would tell you, you need to drop this class because you're going to fail. I can see Dr. Fuller right now and his bow tie very eloquently saying, Mr. Aiken, here's a drop class slip. I think you need to go and drop this class. Very serious. So it was, I'm not going to go to this man's class unprepared because he's going to jam me up in front of all my other friends who prepared themselves by studying. So I kind of carried that into the military because when I went into the military, there were very, very few African-American environmental engineers, environmentalists in my corps. As a matter of fact, my first assignment at Fort McPherson, I was the only African-American lieutenant out of 21. So, where is Tuskegee? What is Tuskegee? Where are you from? It was always about, you think you can keep up with us? Yeah, I can. I had to prove it to them. You know, so Tuskegee prepared me, ROTC department prepared me to meet those challenges.
Where did you serve?
Where did? Served all over the world. My first assignment was in Atlanta, Georgia, Fort McPherson. And they gave me the opportunity to serve in Europe, Germany, traveled throughout Germany extensively. Came back to Fort Benning, Georgia, where I spent 5 years working with the infantry, and left there and took a field command in Korea, where I was the XO of the field medical unit, 5th Preventive Medicine Unit. And we had units throughout Korea. That was a 2-year tour. Left there, came back to Aberdeen Proving Ground, Maryland, where I became division chief in 2 separate divisions. And left there and stayed in Aberdeen, but moved to a new command element, working with the Corps of Engineers, and then got selected for command. And my family and I moved to Colorado in August of '92, where I became the first African-American commander of the U.S. Army Environmental Hygiene Agency West in Denver, Colorado. And commanded that for 2 years. Left that and went into medical operations and was selected by my command to go to Bosnia, serve on the NATO staff for a tour in Bosnia, where I was the deputy director of the medical coordination cell. Man, that was a great job. And left there, came back to Denver for a short stint, and then after that was reassigned to Washington, D.C. to end my career as a senior military environmental consultant for the Army at Walter Reed Army Medical Center.
What year was that?
That was 1999.
You served abroad. What are some of your memories of serving abroad?
People, dealing with different armies and seeing how they handle situations. Opportunity to lead different people from different backgrounds. See, they see you as an African-American male, a black man. Most times they didn't think of you as an officer. So I was sort of intriguing to a lot of them because you're a black officer in the United States Army. In some places they'd never seen one or even dealt with one. So you have to prove very quickly that you have the knowledge and the skill sets to do the job, that you know how to take charge, but yet not be a bully, if you understand what I'm saying. Allow people to flourish in their own space, but they also knew who's in charge. And I think that was the beauty of working abroad with different nations and different countries and different people.
Did anyone ever challenge your authority or respect?
Of course.
What instant come to mind?
In a medical coordination cell, there was a Dutch officer who was a lieutenant colonel and I'm a colonel. Again, in dealing with some of the foreign officers, they'd never seen one before. And what they would try to do, subtle things, you know, subtle attacks against your command either by their actions or something that they state. But one thing you learn as you get higher in rank is you don't have to belittle someone to get your results. You just outsmart them. You know, by telling, I appreciate what you're trying to say or do, however, you're not in charge, I am. Rank has its privileges. Do you agree? Very subtle, but yet you're getting your point across. I could go and yell and scream and all that, but then what happens when everyone else sees you act like that? And the key thing about being in command or anything like that is when the going gets tough, you have to keep your head level at all times, because you're supposed to know everything about that command than anybody else does. However, you don't assert that saying that I'm the smartest guy in the command. Never do that. Uplift those below you to make you even better.
Colonel Aiken, were you ever in combat?
Bosnia, but not direct under fire, but in a combat zone. Bosnia was, we got there right after the Bosnian War. I got there in January of '96. The entire country was just in shambles. Blown up cities, bullet-riddled buildings, no infrastructure. Not good.
What were your duties at that time when you were in Bosnia?
I was on the NATO staff. I managed the medical coordinating cell. I had 5 officers working for me, German, Dutch, French, Italian. They were my staff, and our responsibility was to go throughout Bosnia and throughout Croatia to make sure that the health of the command was top-notch and that we would prepare them to go through different ports to return back home in a safe manner. So we had to check hospitals, check engineering commands, check anything that would affect their ability to return home safe. So that was my responsibility with my staff.
Now you mentioned that you saw the aftermath in Bosnia. Did you witness any casualties, or what was the destruction? What made such a great impression on you about the destruction that you saw?
Imagine Atlanta, downtown, and every building in Atlanta has been bombed or shot up. Imagine Atlanta having no sanitary systems in place, no water, no food, no lights, no public services, black market is rent. Imagine Atlanta at pitch black dark at night, that you can't see your hand in front of your face. Imagine Atlanta not having any food. What do you think will happen here? Chaos. That's what Sarajevo was like. That was Mostar was like. That was just about every city in Bosnia was like. You could see death, anger, fear, every facet in the eyes and the body language of the people. And you see that every day.
What kinds of friendships and camaraderie did you form while serving in the military, and with whom were some of your closest friends?
In Bosnia, one of my closest friends is Norbert Kikovic. Norbert is a German lieutenant colonel, veterinarian. Cesare Fontan, Italian. Damien Ott, French. They were like my brothers in war. Since Bosnia's ended, Norbert Kikovic has been to our home twice. The last time with his wife and daughter living in our home for 8 days and eating breakfast at that table every morning. We are still connected. Damien Art, the French, Cesare Fontane at Rome, we're all still connected as a result of that experience in Bosnia. Now imagine December of 1995, we're all at home with our families, wherever that is. January 19th of 1996, we're all in Bosnia. We come from everywhere as one. We're bringing everything with us, whatever we had at our home, but now we got to bond as a team. So whatever prejudices we had to eliminate them real quick. Why? Because our lives depended on each other. So how do you do that? You bond very quickly. You do what you have to do to bond. And in this case, we all went to a town called Rijeka, which is on the northeastern tip of Croatia. Cesare Fontane, the Italian officer, set it up. And we drove from Zagreb, Croatia, to Rijeka, and we checked into a hotel. First time we've all stayed together. We never stayed together before. But we go there, and we eat dinner, and we spent 4 hours together and got pissing drunk. But we bonded. By the time that dinner was over, we were brothers, because all of the other aspects didn't matter. What mattered was us there, right then. We had to depend on each other. That's why that bond is still good today.
So language, what about language barriers?
But there was language barriers, but you know what? We taught each other because we had to. I learned every morning. I had cappuccino with Cesare. Every morning. Italian, that's the way they start their day. Antonio, a cappuccino. All right, I'm going. In the afternoon, I got to deal with Damien Art, the French, for aperitif. That's every night at 6 o'clock. Cheese, wine, bread, and sausage. 2 hours before dinner, we're drinking, eating cheese. Got to. Norbert, I'm drinking beer. Because Norbert's like beer. So once you adapt and learn their customs and how they do things, you say, okay, I got to deal with these brothers. I better learn what they're doing quickly. Because if I don't, I'm on the outside looking in.
Do you bring any of your culture in?
Oh yeah, I brought my culture into them because every morning I used to drive them crazy. I would walk in my office and say, is everybody happy? And they used to look at me like, is this man crazy or what? And it got to be such that they knew my personality was always up. So when I would walk in the office, after a while they would say, we're happy, shut up. But, you know, I even had a very, very good friend of mine. He's like my brother, Rod Wilborn. I'm an avid golfer. And here I am in a war combat zone, and I get this FedEx package. U.S. Post, I can't remember now. It was kind of an oblong package, right? And I'm in the cell with everybody. And, you know, we all looked at each other's mail, and I opened it up, and my friend Rod sent me a putting green, 2 golf balls, and a putter. And I started putting in the office, and before you know it, everybody wanted to start putting. It was another method of bonding. So we started challenging each other. Who could be the best putter in the office? So, you know, there's certain things you do, whatever it takes to bond, because again, you're living with someone 24/7 every day. You learn their customs. You're doing what they do. Don't be the ugly American kind of thing. You know what I mean? When I'm with the Italians, I know they like to eat a lot. When I'm with the Germans, they like to eat and drink. When I'm with the French, they come to work late, but they stay late. Because by 6 o'clock, there's their aperitif. 8 o'clock, they're going to eat. They're going to eat from 8 to maybe 11. So you have to adapt.
How did you stay in touch with your family back home?
Well, a couple of ways. The military had an Audubon line, which is a military line that you could call from one military operator to another military operator, and then they would get into your family. But when you're in a combat zone, or what they call it, the box, that becomes difficult for the U.S. soldiers. But there's one interesting story. It says, I was in a town called Split. I was very depressed. We've been running and working, and we were in this closed up, bombed out hotel. And you can tell back in the day it was just a fabulous hotel. And behind it was this river. And it had sort of like a huge veranda on the back. And so you could tell back in the day they had some beautiful parties. But it was just as quiet. I mean, all you could hear was the river flowing. And I walked out and I was looking onto the river and I was very depressed. And Cesare said, Antonio, what's the problem? I said, I miss my family. I really miss my wife. He said, no problem. He gets his cell phone out of his uniform pocket, dials Rome, Rome dials New York, New York dials Denver. I speak to my wife. Blew my mind. My depression was gone. Because our philosophy, U.S. Army, U.S. forces, we can't have any cell phone and all that kind of stuff. But the foreign armies do it a lot different. They do whatever it takes. The Italians, they brought their cooks to the fields, cook pizza. The Germans, they brought their cooks, and they cook fresh bread and have beer every day. I'm with the Hungarians, I'm eating goulash soup or whatever. They brought whatever it takes to keep their soldiers happy. We're, the United States, are in a different zone. And I'm not saying it's bad, that's just the way we do our business, depending on the threat. It could be Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, whatever it is. But we always have to be in full combat gear at all times, because when we're in Bosnia, we were always prone to sniper fire. Somebody could be beaming on me and blow my head off if I don't have my Kevlar helmet on or my bulletproof vest. The other countries don't have the same philosophy. They're like, we're not doing it. We're not going to do it that way. So, again, you adapt, you deal with it. That's how I handled that situation, calling my wife, utilizing a different soldier's method from a totally different army to get the same end result.
Before you go on, I want to ask a couple of follow-ups, because you've described allies for the war, and so we have to give us a little history on why those nationalities were at war with you. Well,
when the Dayton Peace Accord was signed in December of 1995, it was under the NATO peace agreement. The NATO's forces out of Brussels, they were under what they call the Operation Joint Endeavor, which was controlled by the United Nations. The United Nations, or the NATO command, came together for the first time to be activated for war, or in a war environment. So we had 35 nations representing 36,000 military personnel coming together in a peacekeeping endeavor to keep the Bosnians, the Serbs, and the Muslims from ethnic cleansing. That's what that was all about. When Tito died, the president of Yugoslavia, he died, he was a dictator. All hell broke out throughout the Balkans. borders became fragile. Ethnic cleansing became big. Serbs didn't like Muslims, Muslims didn't like Serbs, Bosnians didn't like either one of them. So we were there to keep peace, peacekeeping forces, which means you can't fire until fired upon. We can't go in there lock and loaded to kill. We have to be shot at first and in a threatening environment before we can return fire. So that's why the stress factor was so high, because you were in a very volatile region, and there are a lot of bombs, there are a lot of mines, and a lot of snipers. And there's still a lot of hatred against people coming in to try and clean up their business.
And you also mentioned your wife.
Yes.
And so we've kind of skipped over that piece of your life. So how did meeting your wife, starting a family, and your military all come together?
It was unique. I met my wife in Europe. She was actually living here in Atlanta.
And her name is?
Brenda Gail Aiken. And Brenda's from Boston. I was a captain in the Army in Frankfurt, Germany, and she was visiting her girlfriend, Sharon Wilborn, and her husband and I were very close friends. And I had no idea that Brenda was coming to Europe. I didn't even know Brenda existed. And actually met her in a parking lot, in a PX, post-exchange parking lot. And later on that night, we ended up at the same party. A friend of mine who's a POW, Tony Marshall, one of the F-4 pilots that was shot down in Vietnam in 1968. He and I were very close friends. And Tony, because of his background of being a POW, never wanted to be alone, being a prisoner of war. Hated being alone. So just about every weekend, we had a party. And he would invite everybody to his house. And I was one of them along with 3 other guys. And Brenda came to that party. And one thing led to the next. And 3 years later, we married at Ben Hill United Methodist Church. June 5th, 1982 at 8:30 p.m. So,
vaguely familiar.
Oh, like it was yesterday. I remember.
In your story, because I heard you retiring in Denver.
1999.
In Denver? Or?
No, I retired out of Walter Reed.
Okay.
31 March 1999.
Okay.
After serving 26 years, it was time to end a career, because I was separated from my family. They were in Denver. I was in Washington. So I was doing the 2-week commute thing. I was taking a red eye from Denver to Dulles to Denver every 2 weeks. And I was missing my kids growing up. So when I got to the 26-year career mark, I said, it's time to give it up. They didn't want me to, but I worked hard. And the general appreciated what I did and granted me my request to retire. Just when you say you want to retire, it doesn't say you will retire. You have to be approved to retire. Understand? It's not like, I'm done, I leave tomorrow. Oh no. You serve at the pleasure of what? The president and his nation. So if your skill sets are needed, and if something needs to be done that hadn't been done, they can deny you retirement. But I said, I worked hard. I worked very, very hard. And the general appreciated my service. And I just retired.
I saw and I heard that, and I jumped all over Sean's questions. I'm going to let him get back to his interview. I apologize.
What do you do for recreation on your off-duty time?
I'm an exercise buff, really. I was a big-time runner. Running 7-8 miles was like nothing to me. I would get an endorphin high from running. Staying in shape was the best thing for me in the military, because you have to understand, you're protecting yourself. if you understand what I'm saying. I can't put your gas mask on for you in a combat zone. You can't put mine on in a combat zone. I need to protect myself. So training for me was key. Staying in shape was always important. Then I got into golf because I realized golf was a game where I could relax and think and meet people. And it's a game of integrity, and it's a game of determination. And you can't get pissed off in anybody if you mess up, because it's your game. So staying in shape, enjoying golf, traveling with my wife and family, those are the things that I enjoy. I really do.
Where were you when the war ended in Bosnia?
I was back stateside. I was back in the States. And it was good to be back home. That's a tough place to be. I mean, you know, as they say, war is hell. Any environment where life hinges every day, and you don't know if it's going to be your day or somebody else's day, is stress. When I returned back from Bosnia, I was so thin, my wife thought I had grown taller because I lost so much weight. My memory was very short because, as I said, it was a 24/7 kind of thing every day. And you had to be sharp all the time. I mean, you had to be on it. You didn't have time to lollygag, as they say. You still had to run and stay in shape. You still had to practice your military skills. You had to understand how to deal with all these different nations because you depend on each other. You couldn't have attitudes. You couldn't come to work with an attitude. You follow what I'm saying? You had to be on it.
How did you return home?
How?
Yes.
Military flight back to Fort Bragg, and went through debriefing and flew out of there and came back home.
And returning home was to Denver?
Denver, yeah.
Okay. How did your family and the community in Denver receive you?
That's kind of funny because I returned home and I was at Fort Bragg for 2 days going through debriefing, and I called my wife and said, "Babe, I'm ready to come home." She said, "Oh no, you can't come home yet." I'm like, "What? What do you mean I can't? You can't come home yet?" I didn't understand. So you know, your mind running crazy, doing all kind of things. But what I did not know, that our children, under the guidance of my wife, they put together a lemonade stand to sell lemonade, to rent a limousine to pick their daddy up from the airport.
Beautiful thing.
That was amazing. To fly back, not knowing what to expect, and there's this white limousine waiting there with your wife and 2 kids waiting to pick you up. And then when you come home, 2 of your very good friends meet you, Larry Hurst, with 50 hot apple turnovers because he knew I was an apple turnover guy. And then Claudie Minor, former Denver Bronco football player, great, who took care of my family when I was gone, to come to my home. I said, "Welcome back. We had your family while you were gone. Oh, by the way, we're going to lunch tomorrow." Priceless.
I'd like to go back to something for a moment, if I could, Colonel. You mentioned the camaraderie that you developed and how natural it was with these different other military persons from other parts of the world. Where did you develop that camaraderie? Was it because you come from a large family? Was it at Tuskegee? Was it a fraternal thing? What do you think, how was that so easy for you to bond with these gentlemen and have that one mind and that one goal that, hey, we have to work together and I'm going to facilitate that?
Everything starts at home. I come from parents, neither of which graduated from high school, but always taught love. Always believe in who you are, that God didn't make anything stupid or dumb, that you have the ability to do anything you want. That's one, God and family. Two, the nurturing at Tuskegee, the outstanding training, the outstanding mentorship, bonding. Then to go to different places and to be a sponge. Learn from everybody. Watch, observe. And once you take all that in, you formulate you. God already had it in you, but now it's just being puttied and mixed and matched. And not having the ugly American syndrome. I got it all. We're the #1 army in the world. We're the best. No. There's some nations that do things much better than we do. Why? Because we're on their grounds. We're in their nation. We're in their culture. So what you do is you go over there and you open your eyes and your mind to something different. And once you do that, you find them opening up to you. I'm going to teach you this. I'm going to show you this. I never had to tell anybody I was the boss. That's the worst thing you have to do if you have to tell somebody you're the boss. That comes from respect. If you do your job and you're going to do the job as much as they're going to do the job, you got respect. I'm never going to tell you to do something I'm not willing to try. I've done myself. Because they see it. Your eyes are a picture to your soul. I've always remembered that. Pledging Omega. That was hard. But 15 other brothers that I pledged with, we're like brothers today, 46 years later, because we developed an unbelievable bond. We were broken down to what they say nothing, and then built back up. We were built together as a team. So whatever you endured, I endured. If you were doing more, I wanted what you were doing, because I wasn't going to let that happen to you by yourself. You see what I'm saying? So whatever that took, I was willing to do. Whenever we went to a different Army's location, even though I was in charge, I would say, Cesare, we're with the Italian, you got the lead. Damien, we're with your French brothers, you got the lead. Norbert, we're down here and split with these Germans, you got the lead. And guess what? Every time we would go into a place and we were introduced, that's our commander. I never said it myself. They said it for me. Why? Because we develop a respect and bond for each other. And that's what life's about, respect and the bond. Especially in that military environment. The military is so different from a civilian environment that it drives me crazy. Because it's so structured. And if you understand that structure, good, bad, and different, it's not all perfect, but if you understand that structure and how to work within that structure, you can get a lot accomplished.
The military environment is very different from the civilian environment.
Huge.
So how did you reacclimate yourself to civilian life?
It took me a minute. You know, it took me a minute. When you're a colonel in the United States Army, a lot of things are done for you. Okay? A lot of things are done for you. You have people at your beck and call because that's the way the rank structure is set up. So all I had to do was make a suggestion, it was done. Or gave an order, it was done. Well, you come home, your wife's the general, she said, no, I'm not doing that. That ain't happening. So now you rebound and say, wait a minute, hold up, she's 5'3", I'm 6'3". You know, I got 26 years of military training. Don't mean nothing.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. So
smart will make a man.
yeah, so it was more of an adaptation thing to me, by more observance and try to adapt how things are being done outside the military. That took me probably 3 years, 4 years to say that I was fully somewhat adapted to civilian life, but I still had the military in me. You know, it can come out real quick. And I have to control it sometimes because I can be very direct. I can be extremely direct and say exactly what's on my mind, but I have to be careful how I say it to a civilian. You know what I mean? I just can't be outright like in the military.
What have you done since retiring from the military?
Well, after retirement, you know, my wife and I, we formed a business. We owned an environmental engineering firm. We did work all over the world, working for the U.S. government. And it would blow people's minds what Aiken Global Group did right here from Atlanta, Georgia.
Such as?
2005, our company was hired by the U.S. State Department to write the disaster preparedness plan for the Galapagos Islands in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Our company. Or we did all types of various medical and engineering and environmental training throughout the Caribbean for the U.S. State Department in Barbados, Grenada, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Guatemala, all those places. We've done energy in Hawaii, Alaska. We've done health and safety in Indiana, Kentucky, you name it. We've done a lot of different things around the world.
Obviously, Colonel, from our conversation here, you owe the military a great deal. I can hear that in the way you describe things and in your life lessons. What is the top 2 life lessons you learned from serving in the military?
Integrity is #1. No question about it. If you lose integrity, you're done. Freedom's not free. #2. We take way too much for granted.
We being Americans?
Americans. We take way too much for granted. Folks don't realize the sacrifice a person in the military makes for us to be free. We take that for granted. Yes, we're a volunteer army. That is true. But we volunteer because of our patriotism. To be a patriot, that's the bottom line. We weren't, this is not my home. My bloodline is Africa, I know that. However, this is home now. So when I am at home here, I'm going to do everything I can to protect my home against any foreign adversary. Why? Because of my family and my bloodline. I don't want anybody coming here kicking my door in. That don't belong here. So, if you join the military, come full and real. Don't half step. But this is not a game. This is real. Freedom, not free. Integrity. Those are my two top.
Is there anything you feel you'd like to have discussed, or would you like to add anything in this interview that we haven't mentioned?
Respect the veteran. Respect those that serve. That this country realize the sacrifices being made for an individual, man or woman, to go through what they go through every day to protect individuals. We need to give them a lot of thanks. It takes me off very quickly if I see a veteran being disrespected. You don't want to see that side of me. I know it's in me. Respect the veteran.
Lastly, Colonel Aiken, what message would you like to leave for future generations who will view and hear this interview?
A lot of sacrifice went into get us where we are today. A lot of lives lost. Going on back to the Revolutionary War, whereby our people served and disrespected. We have a lot of people of color, not just black, but people of color, who served this nation. And for the youngsters to know today and in the future of the sacrifices made for them to be where they are now. They've forgotten that. They don't know their history in regards to the sacrifices made. My uncle in World War II, who was blown up in Pearl Harbor, who spent a number of years in the VA hospital with shell shock. I would get letters from him shaking. Or a cousin who became the top 3-star general in the Army IG Corps from Moncks Corner of Berkeley County, South Carolina. A black man who came from a small country environment to become a top 3-star general. You got history. You got nothing but history. Don't forget it. Your family, my wife's family, we all have history. A lot of blood went behind this. A lot of blood. You know? So we can't forget that. So this future generation coming on, let's not forget that. And if you decide to serve with dignity and honor and integrity, perseverance, be the best that you can be, represent yourself and your family. Because the moment you step outside, somebody watching you, especially if you're a black man in uniform, you are being observed from the moment you walk outside. And the higher you get in rank, they're like, now, is that affirmative action? Was he enlisted first? Not that you went to ROTC, a college graduate, that you earned it from hard work. Somebody had to help you get there like that. So, would I serve again? Absolutely. If I had to do it over, no question. It was my endorphin high. I loved it. When we retired, my wife and I looked at each other and said, is this really over? Yeah, it was over. But I'll do it again.
Well, thank you, Colonel Aiken. We greatly appreciate your time and the conversation. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. Thank you, sir.
Enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
I have a couple of just follow-up questions because we got the opportunity to interview you. Sean was coming to you through his Omega connections, and I was talking to you as a result of Ben Hill United Methodist Church. You mentioned Ben Hill, and I'm not quite clear in the story of you popped over to get married to your lovely wife at Ben Hill, but where did Ben Hill and Atlanta get into your life story?
Well, my wife was a member of Ben Hill, and when we decided to marry, we came to Atlanta for our interview with the Reverend Cornelius Henderson. To me, that was extremely interesting because I liked him. He was a nice man. My wife being a member of the church, we decided, well, she decided we were going to get married there, and it was going to be a nighttime wedding. It was 8:30 at night. And, you know, we had common friends living in Atlanta, even though we didn't know each other. But once we decided to marry, and then all of those friends and family came together, and the Ben Hill marriage it was a great experience. I mean, great experience. You know, and we're still very active at Ben Hill, extremely active.
So share with us a little bit about the Veterans Ministry.
Yeah, it's in August of 2012. Then Senior Pastor Richard Wynn, along with Tony Griffin, who was the president at the time of United Methodist Men, wanted to recognize the veterans. So I was approached to try and put something together. He said, fine. So I started talking to a few people who were veterans in the church, and we came together and we organized ourselves. And then the NLD committee at the church decided to make it a ministry.
And NLD is?
Nominating Developmental League, something for the church, I don't know whatever it is, but they decided to make it a ministry, a full-fledged ministry under one of the worship teams. And at the time I think it was evangelism. And what they wanted us to do was not only to bring all the veterans together, but to evangelize to other veterans. And evangelism would be supporting the homeless veterans by providing them support through education about the VA system, working with them under family crisis, that type of thing, and praying with them. But we've since branched off from that and soon to help with feeding the homeless and getting involved with the homeless veterans program at Fort McPherson by providing them packets of personal gifts and care, that kind of thing. So it's still evolving, but to me it's a great ministry.
And the slogan?
For?
The ministry, where you, some gave?
Some gave, some,
or
all, no, that's not the exact story. All gave some gave all. And that's serious. That's a serious slogan. That's why I said freedom is not free. Not free. We need to remember that.
And there's a radio show?
Yeah, we also have a radio show. It's called Veterans Today. And it comes on Friday afternoon from 12 to 2. And it's under WCEG radio station. And we talk about a lot of different issues to educate the veterans, not only about the VA system, about the VA medical care. We talk about how to purchase homes, educational benefits. We talk about some of the problems in the VA system and how they should be corrected. We also try to give them an avenue to come and talk to us about some of their concerns. And it's been an enjoyable experience so far.
And my last question is, you sent us some photographs. And so maybe Sean, at this point you can go on over into the frame, share that with him and have him.
Oh, this is my team in the medical coordination cell in Bosnia. And if you take a look at this, I'm looking at a Czechoslovakian.
Are you telling us left or right?
Left or right. Mm-hmm. It's a Czechoslovakian captain. It's a French captain and a German officer. and we're all together in our medical coordinating cell in Bosnia. This is my command photo when I was at Walter Reed as a commander, deputy commander of preventive medicine at Walter Reed Army Medical Center. The next is our Operation Joint Endeavor badge, and this is pretty unique because you have the flags of the different nations under the NATO, and this was a badge of honor. If you got this badge, it was a badge of honor. Oh, wow. Boy, this brings back memories. This photograph here is actually in the Sarajevo airport. We had just gotten off a flight coming through Sniper Alley. That's why we're all dressed in our combat gear. And we were probably going to visit some command in the dead of winter. I mean, it was the dead of winter. I was on a flight, the only one on the flight, by the way. And I was flying from Zagreb down to Split to visit the German headquarters. And my command got me a flight to take me down there. And that was very interesting. I was the only person on the plane.
And you had to go there for
a command briefing with my German counterparts down in Split. I often did that to make sure that our coordinations were correct. And we traveled throughout the country, but I always had to go to the command element first to discuss what we were going to do. This is a photograph of me being promoted to the rank of captain. I was at Fort McPherson, and that big gleams on my face because I never expected it. You know, I was an ROTC DMG, and I only wanted to stay in 4 years. But the military was such fun that I said, you know what, I'm going to Europe. Promote me. So they promoted me, and I left right after that going to Frankfurt, Germany. This is bonding. Left to right, Norbert Kikovic, Cesare Fontan, me, Damien Ott, and a German officer who was our host. And we were bonding. We were down in the German hospital and we were on a recce. A recce is a reconnaissance trip. And this was an opportunity for us to socialize with our host, the German officer down in Split. Every afternoon you did this. That's how you ended your day, bonding, through some type of social media which involved drinking. I had to learn how to drink, because everywhere you went, you drank. So if you didn't drink, they thought you were not being hospitable. So you had to learn their customs.
Had a little bird in my ear, asked me to ask you about Birmingham.
Oh, well, as a result of being in the military over the years, I became legally blind. I'm a legally blind disabled veteran. That was hard for me. I did not want to accept it. I fought it. I was angry with it. I refused the training that was available for me. That was the ego part. I'm the Colonel, U.S. Army. I'm not going to get involved with this. But then when my vision started to decrease even more and things started to happen, I had to relinquish that. through the continued support and discussions with my wife, you got to go to this training, I decided I better go to this training. So I went down to the southeastern Birmingham Veteran Hospital to the blind rehab school. Again, that was hard. Frat brother, Dr. Webster Wallace, and my wife drove me down August of 2014. I was in the back seat. They were driving up front. And even though I was on the up and up, saying I was ready to go inside, I was like, man, what am I about to do? And it wasn't until they left and I was finally alone, and I went back upstairs to greet my 24 other brothers in arms, that I realized how selfish I was, because I could still see to a degree. There were some veterans there that couldn't see at all. Had no clue what was around them. And would ask you, man, you can see, tell me what's going on. You got eyes, you can see. I'm saying, man, am I crazy? So I had to go through that, and I learned how to appreciate even more the sight that I have, and to help others, to the point that we now have a non-profit organization formed called Visually Impaired Veterans of America, to help raise funds to help other veterans who are not as fortunate as me, who are not 100% disabled, to go to training. And this non-profit will provide funding for them to go there for transportation, and once there, provide personal items for them while they're in the hospital. I was there for 2 months, 60 days. Yes, I was afforded the opportunity to come back home on a couple of weekends, but when you're there 24/7, you become thoroughly immersed to understand what's going on. And now you develop other brothers in arms, Jerry White, Stephen Jackson. You know, these are brothers who are visually impaired like I am, but we bonded to help each other and support each other. And even now, almost 7 months hence, we're still in communication. See, that's what the military does to you. You develop a bonding because all of you are going down the same kind of road. If you understand what I'm saying. It's sort of like pledging. You know, you bond because you all understand. You've all gone through the same thing. And as a result of going through that same thing, you understand what the other person's dealing with. So you adapt to it. And you're not afraid to open up. You know, we take care of each other. If you understand what I'm trying to say. You kind of take care of each other. So if you've gone through that process, that's what happens, that bond. So, you know, at Birmingham experience, support of my wife and my family and my kids and my frat brothers and my church members all helped me to be a better person in regards to dealing with this. Mm-hmm. I don't have that inhibition like I used to. I'm not embarrassed to use my cane anymore. I'm not embarrassed to accept help. You know, those things don't bother me. I take it on, right, and say it's something I need to do, and now I want to pass it on to others. So soon you'll see my website coming up, Visually Impaired Veteran. Right. And also you'll have the opportunity to donate, because every money, every dollar is going to be flipped over to the Birmingham Blind Rehab Center. So I have a GoFundMe account going now. website's going to be coming out, and we're going to have a campaign called $100 for 100 friends for $10,000. And we're hoping that 100 friends around the country would donate $100 to give back so we can give money to that blind rehab center.
Wow. Look how the Lord is using you.
Every day. It's a blessing. Every day I wake up thanking Him. Not only for the environment that I live in, but how He's protected me in so many other environments. Well, I didn't know where I was half the time. Where are we? Why are we here? Didn't know. Had no clue. But that protective hand was there, man. I'm telling you. I've been some places you would never even think of going. I've seen some things you would never even have the opportunity to see because we're here. Once you are there in that uniform, man, it's a different experience. One that I do gladly again.
We're hearing. Well, we appreciate your time today, Colonel Aiken.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for your service.
Appreciate you.
Most importantly. And we'll try and keep educating this next generation on the sacrifices that you and others made so that we can live under that flag.
A lot of sacrifices.
Yes.
A lot of sacrifices.
Thank you again.
Appreciate you. Thank you.